talk about creating that vision and that plan, defining that success. What is that success? And we wanted to make sure that we understood that leadership was going to be critical, but we needed to understand what is leadership. Because sometimes leadership, I think, can be misrepresented. I think sometimes we feel as if leadership is the position that is held. The president, the sergeant, the head of the department, the principal, whatever. Leadership is not a position. Leadership is the action that you take to serve others. That's what leadership is. It is not a position. And we needed to make sure that we understood that as we were coming together to create that plan, is that leadership is the action we need to take. And it is so critical that we collaborate and listen and intentionally get a handle on what it is the needs of the whole are, so that we can create the plan to go and serve. That's what it's all about. All of you have a lot of stuff to do today. Probably has to do with your company, your career, whatever, but you've decided that you are going to spend this morning to get together, get excited about the Prime Initiative, think about how we can grow this partnership so that we can grow this county. That's what leadership is about. And the second thing that I think leadership is about is that leadership, that service, part of the responsibility is to help those that you're trying to serve to understand the difficulty of the challenge and what it's going to take to do it. That's so critical. That's what I always felt my student athletes wanted. We spent a lot of time writing goals, creating visions, and so forth. The big step, though, was, what's it going to take to do that? Everyone said they wanted to come in and go to the NFL, or they wanted to win the national championship, or they wanted to go to law school someday, or they wanted to start a business or whatever. What will it take to do that? That, in my mind, is a critical component of leadership as well. What's it going to take to do it? And that was the beauty of being around the Oak Ridge National Labs, or having a chance to talk to the leadership in our state, or my colleagues, the 14 public presidents. We're constantly talking about what's it going to take and who do we need to work with. And the beauty of what you're doing here with this initiative can be a great model. Because I'm convinced that the thing that we need more than anything else is to understand how to work together, how to appreciate one another, how to respect one another, how to learn more about one another. This is a diverse world getting more diverse. We just had a neat program on campus. I have a group called the Presidential Mentors, and I have about 25 students, and once a month they mentor me. And after sitting and listening to my deans and department chairs and administrators and all that, then I sit with the students and I hear from their vantage point, because that's who we're there to serve. And we had a neat program. We talked about the fact that they really felt, and I agreed, that we needed to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations so that we could learn more about one another and so that we could progress together. Because the world that our students are going out into is going to be a very diverse world. This country, this county, this state in 25 years won't look exactly like it looks now. The world has become smaller. And so I said to them, what topic would you like to begin with as an uncomfortable conversation that you think we need to understand one another better about? And they were kind of going back and forth. They say, racism is a discussion that's uncomfortable. Socioeconomic status is, personal preferences, religion. Those are all uncomfortable discussions that many times divide us and make it difficult for us to have a partnership going forward. I said, okay, we're only going to do one discussion this semester. Which one do you want first? And they said, you know what, let's start with religion. I said, okay. How would you like to go about it? And they said, well, let's find one student from 7 different religions, and we'll have, in a room like this, we'll put them up on a panel, and we'll discuss and help people understand what some of our beliefs are, with the overreaching theme being, we are more alike than we're different. I said, well, that would be good. That would be powerful. Do you know 7 people, 7 different religions? Yep, we can figure it out. And so they picked 7 of their colleagues. We had a Hindu, we had Muslim, we had a Christian, we had an agnostic, we had 7 different ones. And then as we were preparing for the program, they started saying, well, we're young in our religion. We don't know everything. What if we get a question that we don't know the answer to? And we said, well, you know what? We'll figure that out. So we got sitting on the side a group of experts. We got faculty. We have a chair in Islamic studies, a chair in Judaic studies, philosophy and Christian studies, and so forth. And so we had a group of experts on the side, just in case the student could refer to it. And it was the most powerful, about 300 students showed up. It was the most powerful conversation, thoughtful conversation about the only thing we had to do one time. One of the experts wanted to interject, and they started talking a little bit too much, and someone in the crowd stood up and said, sit down, we want to hear from the students. And it was awesome. But we've got to find ways to make sure that we understand one another, that we appreciate one another, that we can work together, because the world is shrinking. And it's important that we figure out how we can build a team. Again, in my mind, the most important science that might need to be studied right now is team science. How can we do a better job working together? So when we talked about that journey of success we always wanted to have in our vision and mission and goals and all that stuff, we had to work hard on the plan, and we had to work hard on developing that culture that we're going to work together. And you've obviously got that going here. The second thing that we always felt was important to work with our students to understand was that after you've got that plan and that vision and you've committed yourselves to working together, then you've got to work. It takes a lot of work. That nice new building and so forth that's going up, those businesses that you're creating, we know that it takes a lot of work. And we have to understand that you have to roll up your sleeves and you have to go to work. We used to say, if you want a place in the sun, expect some blisters. Work is critical. And we have to make sure that that's a part of the entire discussion. Nothing good will happen if we aren't extraordinary workers. And then the third thing that we would always talk about with our students, our student athletes, is we've got to be able along the way to handle adversity, because it's coming. In life, Adversity's coming. And we have to be able to handle success. In fact, my experience is it's a little bit harder to handle success than it is adversity. Adversity, I think there's something instinctive. When you get punched in the nose or things don't go right or whatever, if you're made of the right stuff, you're probably going to bull your neck, and you're going to learn from that. And you're going to grow from that. But sometimes when things are going well, that C word can sneak in there, that complacency. And all of a sudden, you can get surprised because you started believing everyone saying you were wonderful and no one could beat you, and look where you're ranked, or things are going just fine. I've invented one thing in my life, and it's called the law of progression. And so I Googled one time to find out what the law of progression was, just to see if I really invented it. And the law of progression is something, it's not what I'm going to tell you about. So I've got a different law of progression, and it's not on Google. But here's my law of progression, is that if we're at point A, and we'd like to get to point B, the law of progression from A to B is not linear. That's not the way life works. The law of progression is, as I'm moving along that line toward point B, inevitably something's going to happen. That's just the way human existence occurs. There's a bump in the road, there's a slip, there's a poor decision, there's a mistake, whatever, but there's going to be a bump in the road. And then we get back up onto that line going toward where we want to go, and inevitably there's a bump. It might be a good opponent. It might be someone did it better than you. It might be whatever, but there's going to be a bump. And then you get back up on the road to where you'd like to go, and you're moving, and inevitably there's going to be a bump. The key to the law of progression is this. When you hit the inevitable bump in the road, and all of us have had a lot of them, all of us will have more, you've got to make sure that that bump and that dip doesn't go down too far. Because it takes so much time to climb back up and get back on the road to where you'd like to go. And so ultimately you're going to have those bumps, but your bumps need to be short so that you can get back heading where you're going. We have to handle adversity. People ask when you get a little bit older, about, well, is it the same as when you started, and so forth and so on. And so far, I've only found two good things about getting older. One is that your huddle gets a little bigger. So you know more people, more people have touched your life, and your huddle just gets bigger the older you get, and that's a good thing. The other good thing about getting older, and you get to that point, and I'm now at that age, where you can predict the future. And I'm now there. I can predict the future. And what I tell students all the time is, I can predict every one of their futures. Their future is going to be a combination of things that go exactly the way they planned it, they hoped for it, they designed it, as well as times that it's not going to go quite the way you wanted it. In fact, there might be some of those moments where I can't believe that happened. Their futures will be both. It will be a combination of the two. And the key will be, how well do you handle both situations? Where it's going just like you'd hoped, how are you going to handle that? Where it isn't going quite the way you planned it, how are you going to handle that? That is a critical part of the journey. because you're going to have both situations. So we have that vision, we have that plan, we've decided we're going to work together, we've decided, we understand this is going to take a lot of work. Nothing's going to be handed to us. We have to go out and earn it, and we're going to handle the ups and downs, because there are going to be ups and downs. And then lastly, I would say to you, whatever it is that vision and goals and dreams of that Geauga Growth Partnership or of that Prime School or whatever project you're working on, the ultimate, definitive, difference-making thing will be, do you really believe that you'll do it? Do you really believe that you'll do it? There comes that point in time that the challenges will be tough, and sometimes there'll be seeds of doubt. But can you overcome that with the belief? I remember when I first went to Ohio State as the head coach, I had an old mentor. He was a retired English professor. You remember Doc Spurgeon? And I remember him telling me, I was only at Ohio State like 2 weeks. And I was on the phone with him late at night, and I felt like I was trying to learn about everyone. I was trying to learn what it was going to take, all that kind of thing. And I remember Doc telling me, he said, there's going to be a moment here in the near future where you're going to have that thought creep into your mind, am I really good enough to get this done? Am I capable? And he said, when that moment happens, you have to know clearly that you are. I'm telling you, you are. And I can't tell you the number of times that thought crept in when things weren't going exactly right, that his wisdom crept back into my mind to remind me that ultimately you have to believe. You have to believe. It's not going to be easy. Anything that we're doing in this day and age becomes increasingly more difficult, but we have to believe. In 1986, when we got to YSU, I remember I went into the first team meeting room, and nobody in the room had anything that said Youngstown State on them. They had Cleveland Browns, Ohio State, Austintown Fitch. I mean, everything other than Youngstown State. I was like appalled. And wait a minute. And so we set a little rule, right, John? When you're in that building, you have something that says Youngstown State on. Or if you don't, it's got to be blank. It could be Led Zeppelin, I don't care, but it's not going to be another school. It's not going to be another team. And if it happens to be another school, then you just simply turn it inside out and you can wear it. And I also remember telling them that they needed to believe that we were going to do extraordinary things. They needed to believe that. Now, there was going to be a lot of work. There was going to be a lot that was going to go into it, but they had to believe it first. In fact, I said, I'm going to ask that you learn this poem and that you say this poem to yourself to affirm and to develop that belief that we're going to do some extraordinary things. And they're looking at me like I'm crazy. You want us to learn a poem? I said, yeah. So, well, what's the poem? I said, well, the poem goes like this. Somebody said that it couldn't be done. But she, with a chuckle, replied that maybe it couldn't. But she would be one who wouldn't say so till she tried. So she buckled right in with a trace of a grin on her face. If she worried, she hid it. And she started to sing as she tackled the thing that couldn't be done. And she did it. We needed to affirm in our minds that we were going to get it done, regardless of the difficulty of the task. And I applaud this group for wanting to come together in challenging times to figure out how we can get the community, education, business, industry, everyone involved to figure out how we can grow. Because we're already blessed. I mean, this is a great place to live. But how can we get better? And we're going to have to believe that we can. And here's the beauty of it, and I'll end with this, because I do have a meeting that I have a new provost. Does anyone even know what a provost is? I never knew what a provost was. They said, hey, you'd like to meet the provost. I said, was that like the defensive coordinator? I mean, what's the provost? But anyway, here's the beauty of all this. And John Longano and John Conroy will know this very well. As long as we know what we need from each other to make it happen, we'll be able to do it. And it will be tense times. It will be nervous times. It's not easy. And I know the most nervous we always were was right before the game. Because, you know, when you're preparing and you're in the process, you don't have time to be nervous. But then when you're sitting there waiting for the kickoff, you know, there's no more practice, there's no more anything. But, you know, you can't go out because, you know, one thing we learned at Ohio State for sure was that the only reason we had a team was to give the band a little rest between the pregame and the halftime. So we were in the locker room, given, you know, waiting so the band could, you know, come out of the tunnel. I used to always say, how come the biggest roar is when the band comes out of the tunnel and we come out and it's like... So we had that moment where we were very nervous. So the last thing we would always do, whether it was 15 years at Youngstown State or 10 years at Ohio State, the last thing that we would always do is we would come together and we would remind each other of what we needed from one another in this tense time, in this time that we've spent a lot of time preparing for. A lot of people are watching. It means a lot, way beyond the people in the room. What do we need from each other? And it was a little poem by Edward Everett Hale, and it's about 7 or 8 stanzas. Remember, I had a football team. We learned one stanza. It's all we were capable of. We were nervous. And it went like this. I am only one, but I am one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. And that I can do, I ought to do. And what I ought to do, by the grace of God, I shall do. And really, that's all we needed from each other. Whatever our role happened to be, there was someone that was going to have their hands on the ball a lot, someone that was going to be cheering a lot, someone that was going to be blocking, someone that was going to be doing what a coach was going to be in the box, watching from the box to give us good intel of what was happening on the field. Everybody had a role. And whatever that role was, whatever your role is, if you'll do that, then we'll be fine. We'll be able to live with our results. And as time goes on, we'll evaluate our results. There'll be some days that are better than others. But if we'll all do what it is we're capable of doing, then Geauga will have great growth because of this partnership. Thanks so much. God bless all of you. John's got a lot of paparazzi out here.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Just a little gift for Jim, a little maple syrup from hometown Burton. Thank you, Jim. I mean, it's amazing how people can relate to what's going on here in Geauga County. Certainly a man that can speak the way Jim can speak and put that all together, it's really incredible. You know, Jim said something in his opening statement, how when we look at the next couple of decades, how quickly we're going to need to bring technology. You know, the United States has always been on the forefront of bringing technology into the world. And in order to do that in the next couple of decades, we're going to have to do that much faster and faster and quick. It's going to have to happen much quicker. But what we're doing today here in Geauga County with the Prime Initiative in Kent State, we're laying the groundwork for these young kids. Think about, my granddaughter is going to kindergarten, and if she were going to Berkshire,